All right, let's talk about something I think a lot of us have felt, but maybe couldn't quite put into words. It's this strange, heavy feeling of being lonely, even when you're literally surrounded by other people. We're going to dive into what we're calling the hidden architecture behind this feeling of invisible solitude.
I mean, it's such a weird paradox, right? You could be at a party, in a busy office, walking down a packed city street, and all of a sudden, this deep sense of isolation just hits you. If that sounds familiar, trust me, you are not the only one who feels alone in that moment.
You know, this whole experience of being alone in a crowd has become a really common part of modern life. And it's so confusing because logically, it just doesn't make sense. How can you possibly feel lonely when you're, well, not alone?
At its heart, it's all about a lack of real, meaningful connection. See, there's a huge difference between just physical presence and genuine connection. You can have people all around you, but that emotional bridge, that psychological link, it just isn't there. It's like you can see everyone, but you don't really feel seen.
So to really wrap our heads around this, we need to give it a name. Let's call it invisible solitude. And honestly, just being able to name the feeling is a huge first step toward actually understanding what's going on. The key word here, the one that changes everything, is subjective. This isn't about whether you're physically by yourself in a room. This is an internal experience. It's that feeling of being on the outside looking in, even when you're standing right there in the middle of it all.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Invisible solitude is kind of like a mashup of both loneliness and solitude. It has that painful, unwanted ache of loneliness, but it's happening in a place where you're not supposed to feel that way. And unlike real solitude, which is something you might choose, for peace and quiet, this feels empty, like it's being forced on you.
So where on earth does this feeling come from? Well, a big part of the answer starts with the world we've literally built around ourselves, the physical and, the digital architecture of our day-to-day lives. Just think about it for a second. So many open-plan offices, right? They're designed for constant presence, but they can actually make it harder to have a deep, private chat. Or our cities. They're often built for cars to just zoom through, not for people to actually stop, gather, and build a community. Some public benches are even designed to be uncomfortable so you don't linger. We've accidentally built a world that's super efficient, but not always great for creating a sense of belonging.
And then, of course, there's the digital world. Social media gives us this powerful illusion of connection. We scroll through hundreds of friends, but what we're really seeing is a performance, a carefully curated highlight reel. And when we compare our messy, real, behind-the-scenes life to that, well, it can make us feel more alone than ever. We're constantly plugged in, but we're not really connecting.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this feedback loop we're all in. The spaces we create, whether they're made of concrete or code, they end up shaping how we feel inside, our moods, and our ability to make those real bonds we crave. Okay, but it's not all about the outside world. That's only half the story. To really get this, we have to look inward, because honestly, the most important architecture is the one we carry around inside our own heads.
The external world, that just sets the stage. But it's our internal world, our thoughts, our expectations, the pressures we put on ourselves, that really directs the show. It's how these two things interact that creates that feeling of invisible solitude.
So let's break down these internal blueprints. First, you've got mismatched expectations. You go to a big work mixer, hoping to find a new best friend, and you leave feeling kind of empty. Then there's performance pressure, that feeling that you always have to be on, happy, successful. That makes it impossible to be vulnerable. And all of this creates something called the authenticity gap. The bigger that gap is between who you really are and the person you're pretending to be, the more isolated you're going to feel.
So how do these two sets of blueprints, the external world and our internal world, actually come together to build this invisible room of solitude? Let's put all the pieces together.
It's almost like a recipe, really. First, you start with an environment that's just not built for deep connection. Think of a loud bar or even a comment section online. Then you stir in your own internal hopes for a meaningful talk, or maybe that pressure to perform. You mix it all together and bam, you get this really potent, really confusing feeling of being totally alone in a crowd.
But here's the most important part. Just understanding this, seeing how the world around you and the world inside you are working together is so empowering. It takes the feeling from, oh no, what's wrong with me, to, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. It's not a personal failure, it's an understandable phenomenon. And this is the whole key. Suddenly, you can start to see the invisible walls that have been built around you, and even more importantly, the ones you've built inside yourself. And once you can actually see the walls, that's when you can start looking for the doors.
Maybe that means finding a different kind of space, or adjusting your expectations, or just giving yourself permission to be a little more you.
So the next time you feel that pang of loneliness in a crowded room, maybe don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Maybe instead, you can ask, "What's the architecture of this moment?" Because what if this feeling isn't some permanent state of being, but just a blueprint, one that you now have the power to start rewriting?